So it's your first draft as the guy.
Yeah, that's it's exciting. It's a chance to help the team. You only really have three chances, I think, during the year to help your team: draft, free agency, and the trading deadline. So we've been working hard, and we think we're going to do some good things. About 6 days away.
What are this team's priorities? What do you need most?
You know, one thing, we're lucky to have a guy like Jerry West here, but one thing he continues to repeat is the word assets. And I think you need assets. And the reason why I use that word and the reason why that makes sense is as you build a team, you obviously want players that do well for you, but that also are coveted by the rest of the league. So the more of those type of players you can have, whether they're at the guard position, big position, wing position, the more players you have, and the more players that are considered assets, the better off you'll be. And I think when we look at needs, we need more assets. We need to improve the roster, and we think we're getting there. We think we're better than we were a year ago, but we still have some work to do.
I mean, that sounds to me also like the position is almost irrelevant for you guys. Are you at that point where, or I should say, are you kind of still at that point where the position's irrelevant and you're going to go and get the best player?
Yeah, I'd say that's fair, man. I think that the philosophy we're going to prescribe to is best player. And I think if the best player happens to fit a need, all the better. But I think we're not going to get caught up in going into a draft or making a decision that fills a need and thereby passing on what we believe might be a better player or asset for our team.
What do you think the strengths of this team are? In other words, the things that maybe aren't as much of a priority as some other things.
Yeah, I think our strengths are really yet to be defined. I think you could argue that we have talent at the point guard position, at the young talent at the guard spot. I think we have a little bit more proven talent in the front court. But yet again, I think if you look at our roster and what it's accomplished collectively, really hasn't been anything at all. It's going to be a new year, a new group, players that haven't played together for even 1 minute. So we have to see how this roster gels. And then individually on our roster, you don't see a ton of playoff experience. So I'm going to be careful to judge our roster individually until we can see what these players do when you're competing for the playoffs, when you're actually in the playoffs. And I think we have the potential individually to be a good team at some of the positions, and then collectively we have to see how this team works, what our chemistry is.
You said before that you wanted to get a starter with the number 7 overall pick, or a starting quality player. Do you still think that you'll be able to get a starting quality player with the number 7 overall pick for this next year, or will it kind of develop into that?
Well, I think the hope is for a top 10 pick, and I did say that, and I think I'll qualify it a little bit. What you'd like to have is a player that maybe doesn't start right away. And if he does start right away, that's great. And that's sometimes team specific as to what needs you have, how good the team is. We feel like we're a pretty good team, and we feel like we have positions that are somewhat solidified, where it may be tough for anybody we draft to replace or supplant a starter that is already there. But when you draft in the top 10, I feel like you would like to have a player that, although they may not start right away, have the potential to be a starter. So when I say that, I mean when you draft at 7 and we draft a week from today, a little less than a week from today, I don't know that we would want to draft a player where we on that day believe this player will never be a starter. So when I say starter, maybe not the first day of the season starting, but eventually starting for this team. And if not, being a very, very good player that could start on most teams.
So just to piggyback on that, you probably won't be tantalized by a project at number 7.
No, I would say that, again, I was in the hallway walking over here, and somebody said, I asked them their opinion. I like to solicit feedback. What should we do at this pick? And they said, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to win now or win later? I said, what we want to do is make the best decision. And so sometimes the best decision isn't a short-term decision, it's a long-term decision. And you can go back and look at a lot of drafts and see decisions that were made that looked great on the day of the draft. They looked great the next day in the press conference. And then a year or two into it, all of a sudden, a couple players that didn't go so high in the draft are emerging. And then the critique and the questions come as to why did this team pass on this player. So you have to draft the player you think is best over the course of that player's career. You don't, in my opinion, and I think in our group's opinion, draft a player that you think it's going to be a player that gives you a good 2-3 years, but you know what, after that you're not sure. You want to draft a player that you think is going to be the best NBA player over the course of a career.
Real quick, I heard it's not quite draft related, but Raymond, I heard you say the other day that Bogut just got his cast off. I saw something the other day about Curry thinking about getting out there. Well, can you kind of update the Curry, Bogut, and David, where those guys are with their injuries?
Yeah, well, David's been in here working out. That's the easy one. So obviously, as the general manager and anybody within our basketball operations coaching staff, we want to see him out here on the floor. That's the best thing. I think Curry, because of the history, is going slow and conservative. And if he was also in here last week, and he's kind of chomping at the bit, but he also recognizes that he has to work at the pace that the doctors are allowing him to work at. So he's ready to go and probably would like to get going in the next 2-3 weeks, but we've set a date of August 1st, and I think he's probably mentioned that as well, to get started on basketball-related activities. So he's progressing well. On the last one, which is Bogut, I think it wasn't a cast, it was a boot.
Okay.
So he is out of that, and I think you know what that is, a walking boot. And he's going to come to Los Angeles and see the doctor, I think in a couple weeks, early July, just to get kind of a post-surgery follow-up. And also, he's progressing well. So everybody's doing well, with the idea that Curry, early August, Bogut, mid-August, are going to start working their way back into shape.
And is the goal, just assuming training camps, like let's just say October 1st, that on that first day of training camp, they would have no restrictions, or were you thinking maybe by the season opener, that, or have you thought that far ahead?
No, that's a good question. I think our goal and the mindset is that first day of training camp, they're both cleared without restrictions. That's what I believe on today, June 22nd. And hopefully the timeline follows that plan, and I think it will. And as of today, all the information I have indicates that they will both be ready to go come the first day of camp, and that's what we're planning on.
Have the phones been ringing? A lot of jockeying, a lot of lying going on?
Since I've been sitting here, I have my phone on vibrate. It's probably rang 3 or 4 times. So if we lose deals, it's all your guys' fault here, right? Yeah, but I will tell you, I don't think it's me. It's the fact that we have the picks we have, and I think people see 7th pick, 30th, 35, 52, and look at us and say they may be a seller in this market. So let's see what it's going to cost to buy or trade or do something with us.
Are you leaning towards one way or the other on that, or?
I think as you vet through the possibilities of what we're going to do with our picks, I think if we saw something that allowed us to maybe consolidate the picks, we'd do it, but not at the cost of doing a bad deal. But ideally, what we'd like, I think, is if something came along that was enticing, or something we thought helped our roster, and at the same time maybe went from 4 picks to 3 or 4 picks to 2, I think we'd like to do something like that.
With the D-League team moving to Santa Cruz, is there any thought with the second-round picks that you might be able to get some prospects that you would be able to more closely monitor down there in the development?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, we have an ownership group that I think will carry, if we want to, up to 15 players, which is the league maximum. So it's nice to have the D-League as close as it is, and I think that allows us to, if we want to draft 3 or 4 players and know that they're close and develop them, that allows us the opportunity to do that. And I think that if maybe in a different circumstance we didn't have the D-League so close to us, it may change the way you perceive having a young roster. But it's almost like having such a young team that we already have, plus adding young rookies to it. It's nice to have the D-League there to help them develop, kind of like the baseball farm system model, where you're close enough to them where you can bring them back and forth.